How will the number 2 overall pick affect the rotation? Who gets pushed out? Who gets left off the roster entirely? We'll talk about all of that today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You're Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. As always, we are free. We are available anywhere you get your podcast, and that does include YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA, and when you enter promo code LockedOnNBA, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. Are you a company man enough to show off the shorts or show off the tumbler? Yes, I knew you'd have one. That is Doug Branson.
It's my go-to tumbler.
Yeah, so good. Check out his work, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Getting swiggy with it is Doug Branson, and you can listen to me on WFNZ Sports Radio 92.7 every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m.
Well, it's my go-to tumbler until I lose it. I am notorious. In fact, it's my go-to tumbler because I lost my... You okay there?
See that? Ooh, yeah. Gunshot. Man, that was the hardest I ever banged on the desk. Apparently, I got mad at the tumbler.
Yeah, so I lost my Nalgene, and then it was like a miracle showed up on my porch the very next day after I lost my Nalgene. My go-to tumbler from Bird Dog shows up. Anyway.
Bird Dog's tumbler. Oh, beautiful package right at the front door. Hopefully Scoot is the package for us, or Brandon Miller if he's good. For those that are angry at us for not giving enough Brandon Miller love out there, we're going to talk about him just as much.
I'm just tired of. I'm tired. You can't love a draft pick. You can't love a draft prospect because it means you hate the other prospect, which is. You know, I think it's a really solid tell if you come into the comments and you say that we hate Brandon Miller. It just means you're not a fan of the show. You're not watching the show. It's fine. You don't have to watch the show. But I know you don't watch the show because we talk a lot about Brandon. We've said he's going to be a very good player. I think you and I are both in agreement that we both believe that Scoot has the potential to be an all NBA, like great level player. And we just feel like Brandon's ceiling isn't quite that high. Anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And so if Scoot Henderson is drafted, we've already talked about how the likelihood is Scoot won't be starting immediately. And we can go back to the 3rd overall pick in LaMelo, did not start immediately, did at the beginning of February, his rookie year, and then started the rest of the season until he got injured. So we do have some precedent, but again, it was a different coaching staff. That was James Borrego. This is Steve Clifford. And you do have Terry Rozier's presence on this team still. Maybe they trade him at the deadline. But the question for me here, if we want to focus on Scoot first, Doug, who gets pushed out of the rotation? Because this is LaMelo, who is a lock to be starting somewhere in the backcourt, whether it's on or off ball with Scoot Henderson. I think Terry Rozier will be starting as well, even with Scoot. Clearly, Scoot is going to be a rotation guy. And then it's really interesting, right? Because Cody Martin, he signed the 3-year contract, was not healthy at all. But you would imagine Steve Clifford really values his defense. James Bouknight had just a blip on the radar at the end of the regular season where it's good because it was a flat line until then. And then he gave you a little something, maybe enough of a shock to just see what he can do this offseason. We love Dennis Smith Jr. and what he did. We really like Teo Maledon and what he did. Doug, I ask you, who are some of the guys that are at risk? And I'd even bring in Bryce McGowan's, by the way. Bryce McGowan's, man, what do you do with him? He's interesting as well.
Yeah, they've got a lot of puzzle pieces to figure out. And what makes this a tough question to answer is that there is some uncertainty around this roster, not just with some contracts that the Hornets may look to get off of, like Terry Rozier or Gordon Hayward, and maximize, Hayward's expiring contract, but also we don't know for sure about Miles Bridges. We don't know what's going to happen with PJ Washington. But let's just assume that everybody's back. Let's answer the question the only way I think we can. And I've actually got this document that we came up with at the very beginning of last season where we tried to put the rotation together. And this may help guide our conversation a little bit. So we can go ahead and we can get rid of Jalen McDaniels. He got traded. Mason Plumlee, see ya, buddy. You're traded. And we can put Mark Williams into that starting role.
Right.
Jalen McDaniels also gone from the rotation here. and LaMelo Ball gets, we assume LaMelo is going to be healthy for training camp and preseason, hopefully at least preseason, right? He gets some action there, so he's back into the rotation as well. Kelly Oubre, I don't think he's going to be back. I'm just going to go ahead and slot him out. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I am. It is matter of fact, I guess. But yes, I am okay with that. I would lean towards Kelly Oubre not returning either.
I know he wants to come back, but I don't think that's in the cards, especially when you're talking about having to fit all of these pieces together.
Well, let's focus on that just for a second, because if we're going to do Scoot and Brandon, does Kelly Oubre's presence on the roster, does it matter whether Brandon Miller is drafted or not, or do you just think Scoot or Brandon, Kelly's gone?
No, I think Kelly's gone. I thought Kelly was gone before they, moved up to 2. Like I just
didn't know what you were thinking about with the whole Brandon role in this.
Yeah, for sure. No, but I think that makes it even more difficult if you're drafting another wing player. Mm-hmm. So if we want to just put Terry Rozier in there, all right, at the starting, and then we got Mark Williams at the center position. Okay, so you're really talking about who's going to get. For Scoot, who's going to get dropped from this reserve role. We don't know if DSJ is going to be back either, or Teo Maladone. They've got to make some decisions there as well. I think, James Bouknight is like the obvious pick, right? I mean, he, certainly I think he'll be given a shot, especially if it's Brandon Miller. But if it's Scoot, I think the pressure's on for him to have the summer of his life and come in and compete and say, hey, there's a reason to keep me around for a 10-minute spot in the back of the rotation to come in and knock down some jump shots. But the absolute pressure is on for James Bouknight to say, hey, I've got enough to keep me around.
All right, so if we just focus on the backcourt, then James Bouknight and Teo Maladone are going to be the guys that you immediately go to. Because Cody Martin, while he did not play a lick last season, we do know that Cody was good defensively the year prior, at least on ball, point of attack defense. And we do know that the shot got better. Who knows if it's real, because the second half he did start to tail off a little bit, but at least it was, he was among the league leaders for a certain amount of 3-pointers taken every single game in the NBA the first half of the season, which was astonishing. It was great. So it got him a lot of playing time. So Cody Martin could be that. I still think he's going to be a part of the rotation, especially after the 3-year contract. I think Scoot, how many minutes do we get? If we have these minutes at our disposal here, Doug, we have Cody Martin at 24 on this original log. We had Terry Rozier 30, LaMelo 36. What kind of number would you expect for Scoot if we don't think he's going to start immediately?
Well, I would expect him to be the 6th man off the bench. I think you can't draft a guy number 2 overall and say, hey, look, you're not going to start. Because we have Terry Rozier here and he's the veteran and you've got to earn the minutes over him and not give him a prominent role off the bench. So, I think he'd be your spark plug, 6th man off the bench. We're talking, I would drop Cody Martin's minutes here. And look at Scoot. And possibly, I think there's a name here that we've got to work. We don't have Miles in this rotation yet if we're assuming that he'll be back. Then it gets really interesting because what do you do with PJ's minutes? But I still think Scoot, would be the main piece off the bench. Maybe not on day one, but certainly as it moves into the first couple of weeks of the season.
Well, because it's getting more and more fascinating right before our eyes here as we start to fill this out, because LaMelo, Terry, Gordon, PJ, Mark is who we have in the starting lineup right now. Miles Bridges, if he's back, we don't have him in the starting lineup right now. We don't have Scoot Henderson. So Miles Bridges, a fringe all-star, or Gordon Hayward, or PJ Washington, who, if he's back, is going to be making $20 million. That would be the 6th guy, but also just your microwave, typical Lou Williams bench guy. That would be more so Scoot immediately, at least. The other guy here, Doug, is what I brought up at the beginning of all of this. Where does this leave Bryce McGowens? Because Steve Clifford likes him a lot. And we know that Steve, even at the end of the season, said Bryce was a very nice surprise, a 2nd-round pick that he leaned on at the end of the season, got some minutes even towards the beginning. Man, how many minutes are left over for Bryce?
Not a lot. If we're being honest, I think that Bryce is going to have to do the same thing that he did last season, except now there's a little bit more trust. I think he's going to be more immediately called upon if there is an injury. I think all of these players will have opportunities, just like last season. Hopefully the injuries aren't as bad as last season, but they'll have little mini opportunities to come in and make an impact during the regular season. And those matter because, as we've seen in the NBA playoffs, we see this every year, that different rotation pieces that might not have been leaned upon a ton in the regular season suddenly become a factor in the playoffs. Look at Haywood Highsmith for the Miami Heat, right? You find these little bench wrenches that you have to go to in the playoffs that you didn't really necessarily go to a ton in the regular season, because that's the way the playoffs are. It's a chess game. The regular season's checkers, and all of a sudden it becomes chess. And so just because Bryce McGowens doesn't have like a perfectly fit place in the rotation on day one of the regular season, honestly doesn't really mean anything. It's all about how he performs in those little spot places. Because here's the thing too, as I'm breaking this out visually, right? I slotted Miles in there as the starting four and moved PJ back to the bench with Scoot Henderson, Nick Richards, and Cody Martin. There's still another name that I think, and maybe it's via trade, so it figures itself out with Gordon Hayward or Terry Rozier going away. But I think there's still another name that the Hornets, that we don't even know about, that the Hornets will need to maneuver for if they're really serious about making the playoffs, because they need some playoff experience. They need some veteran experience that can help guide this team. And I don't think they're going to find that except via the trade market.
All right, well, let's talk about that name coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Oh, I don't know the name.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
We're going to figure out a name coming up next. I mean, we know it's a tease because we don't have it right now, but we're going to have to find out. So stay tuned to see who it is going to be. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to the My Garage tab and look for the green check to know the part will fit, or you get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, get the right fit, get the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. More Locked On Hornets coming up next.
Is Locked On Hornets.
Walker, sometimes you don't have to have the best package.
Okay.
Sometimes you just have to have the only package. If you wait, if my dating life taught me anything, sometimes you just have to wait around long enough until you're the only thing remaining. And then suddenly you look pretty great in comparison.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
All right, this conversation about the rotation has mostly surrounded Scoot Henderson. A couple more questions before we move to Brandon Miller. One, the more I look at it, Doug, the more the guy that I do think his minutes are going to be susceptible with some kind of competition, if Bryce McGowens could be that guy and Scoot Henderson is the one that's drafted, it is Cody. I just don't know I don't know how many minutes he's going to get. You have zero there right now.
Well, yeah, I have. Well, we've got some minutes to hand out for sure.
Right, for sure. But so Scoot is in the backcourt. So is Cody Martin. You have Bryce McGowens. We're leaving James Bouknight out. We're leaving Teo Maledon out. Okay, so I see Cody as the guy that comes in with a good, like a high-paying contract, considering some of these other players that we just mentioned. Dennis Smith Jr., we used to say, and I know you used to say this, it was an unserious move if you did not bring him back. Do you still feel that way now that they have the number 2 pick, and if they use that number 2 pick on Scoot Henderson?
Say what now? I'm sorry. I was doing some math in my head for these minutes. Here's the thing. I was promised there would be no math. At the very beginning when I took this job, I was told there would be no math. And suddenly I'm trying to figure out how many total minutes should go into this bucket.
This is your touchscreen on ESPN. You are trying to be our sweet baby Bobby Marks.
I'm trying to be your John King. Exactly. But I think I'm more like Bobby Marks on the touchscreen. I'm failing here. But ask me the question again.
All right. So with all of the minutes being so limited in the backcourt, Cody Martin being that guy that's kind of versatile maybe, so you could put him at the 3 sometimes, but even then it's going to get dicey, whatever. You used to say that if you did not bring Dennis Smith Jr. back, it was an unserious move. Do you still feel that way if they draft Scoot Henderson at number 2?
Yeah, yes, because I still feel like they need that kind of on-ball defensive skill that Dennis Smith Jr. brings. Because I think Scoot has the attitude to become that player. But like if you look at his tape from G League Ignite, like there are still going to be defensive issues. If you remove Terry Rozier from the rotation and go with a ball Scoot backcourt at some point. So I think, if your idea is to go into the season with Terry Rozier in the short term, but not in the long term, and to find a way to get a ball Scoot backcourt going, then I think you still need that Dennis Smith Jr. presence in the backcourt. If it's from Dennis Smith Jr. or some other kind of defensive presence in the backcourt, I still think you're going to need that. I think Scoot would benefit tremendously from playing with Dennis Smith Jr.
Yeah, 100%. And again, one thing we haven't really talked about that we've talked about a lot in the past, it's Terry Rozier could absolutely be traded maybe even this offseason still, or at least at the trade deadline. And so you're not going to make any kind of move where you cut someone because of Terry Rozier, when Terry Rozier is somebody you've already looked to trade, and you might be looking to trade again at the deadline. So that would open up another spot, and then you would get you'd have some more minutes to hand out. All right, let's talk about Brandon Miller here. I know you're still working the touchscreen. I don't know if you want to get Scoot Henderson on out of there. Get out of there, Scoot.
Get out of there, Scoot.
Right. Let's
Brandon,
go.
It's Miller time, baby.
So enter Brandon Miller, right? Let's just say that he is the number 2 overall pick. So now the starting backcourt unquestionably becomes LaMelo Ball and Terry Rozier. And this is where it gets tricky, especially if we are just operating under the assumption that Miles Bridges will return. So Gordon Hayward, Miles Bridges, Brandon Miller, PJ Washington. That is the front court 4 that you're looking at to see how many minutes will be divvied out between all 4 of them. And so with that, it means the more Thor movement is looking a little dicey, in my opinion. What do you think JT Thor is the guy that looks to be on the outs, despite Steve Clifford liking him too?
Oh, yeah. I just noticed that I have 15 minutes reserved for JT Thor. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and drop that to 0.
Okay.
Here's the thing with
10. I don't think that's purposeful either, by the way. I think the math got you on that.
It did. Well, I just figured it out. It's 240 rotation minutes per game. So right now we're sitting at 209. We got plenty of minutes. We got plenty in the budget to figure this whole equation out. But here's the thing with Thor, and going back to our conversation on Bryce McGowan's, I don't think we can wrap any of these rotation discussions around who Steve Clifford likes, because we don't know if Steve Clifford's even going to be the coach next season.
Oh, and we still think that's a question?
That might seem crazy, but look, if this team sells after the draft,
if they sell,
if they sell, then Steve Clifford, I think, along with Mitch Kupchak, are getting the boot. And I don't, whether you think that's fair or not, is beside the point. When new ownership groups take over, they tend to clean house. Now, maybe they'll make an exception here and say, hey, this team was really injured last season. Steve Clifford did a good job of holding everybody together. The locker room loves him. So maybe we just hold on to Steve Clifford through this transition period, and then we give him the boot. But I think ultimately, if they sell the team, Steve Clifford's not long for this world. So I don't think that Bryce McGowan's or JT Thor, we should wrap them up into that kind of context. So with that, I'm saying, JT Thor probably going to find his way back to the G League and having to work his way back up again. But I would say the same thing for Thor as I would for McGowan's, which is there are going to be moments of opportunity. And look, does JT Thor come in after this offseason into training camp a lot bigger, a lot stronger, a lot more consistent as a shooter, the type of shooter that we saw JT Thor be at the end of the season, where he was knocking down Thorner threes left and right? Like, if he's that kind of player, then all of a sudden I'm saying, all right, Cody Martin, you might be sweating. Wrong twin, you might be sweating a little bit, because JT Thor is going to have that opportunity around the fringe. This team's not good enough to count anyone out. I'll just say that.
No, it's not. And plus you're talking about, so if you go with some kind of 9-man rotation, you go with the starters that are listed there, the reserves in that column. If we want to kick out you have 10, I guess, if you just want to go to each of the backup positions there for the starters. And then you have JT Thor and Bryce who got minutes too. And so, yeah, it's going to be tough to figure out how many minutes are divvied up for everyone. And Mark Williams, his minutes are going to go up from the 25 that we have listed here. So Nick Richards, don't know how many he's going to get. It's kind of fascinating.
All right, what do you think here? So here's I finally figured it out. So now that I got the 240 number,
you at least got 240.
Yeah. So I've got
this
36
is like,
for
what's the game? The 53-28, whatever that game was. This feels like that.
You're
right. Whatever that game was. I forget.
So I've got 36 for Lamette. This is under the Brandon Miller situation. I've got 36 for Ball. I've got 30 for Rozier, 31 for Hayward, Bridges at 35 because when he was playing here, they gave him a ton of minutes because you can switch him between 3 and 4, and he can do a little bit for you on both ends of the floor. So I would imagine, you could even probably, knock off a few Hayward minutes here as they just sort of slowly slide him down out of the team, out of the rotation. Probably knock off a few minutes if you wanted to give one of these bench guys some more minutes. And then Mark Williams at 25, that's probably low. I could see him playing a few more minutes than that.
Yeah.
But we don't know that for sure because there was a lot of Mark Williams, Nick Richards question marks. I think obviously Mark Williams is solidified as the starter, but what's that rotation going to look like? I think is still a big question mark. And so then I've got 14 for Dennis Smith Jr. or some equivalent backup point guard. Cody Martin, 10 minutes. He's on the outside. He's like right at the fringe, could fall out of the rotation in a 9-man situation. Then PJ Washington at 20, Brandon Miller at 24. You might flip-flop those, Walker. You might say, hey, Brandon Miller might start as sort of the second option off the bench, PJ Washington first option, and then Nick Richards at 15 minutes as the backup center.
Yeah, I think the one that looks the lowest right now, it is PJ. If you bring back PJ at $20 million a year,
it's $1 million per minute.
he's gonna be playing more than 20, and the lowest amount of minutes he's ever played is 27 2 years ago. But we got to 240, man. Like that's the battle, We got to 240.
We got to 240 with Book with all these draft picks under the Cup Check era getting 0 minutes. Book Knight 0, McGowan 0, Thor 0.
And number 27 overall, who knows about the second round picks? We haven't even factored those player X's in there. So
they're going. I factored him in. I factored him in Greensboro. I've got him hotels already ready to go in Greensboro.
All right, let's maybe give our finishing thoughts on this. Coming up next.
Oh, I got a name, by the way. You want a name? I've got a name. It's part of our next segment, which is Find the Local Angle. I've got a name for that possible question mark name that could jump into the rotation and mess everything up.
Okay, so there you go. All right, Find the Local Angle.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Locked On Hornets. It's sensory overload. We will get to all of it in the final segment. This episode, it's brought to you by Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs are fantastic because they stretch kind of like khaki shorts. They're designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look, as you saw from Doug when he showed them off. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of this stiff, restricting cotton, and Bird Dogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dogs uses the anti-stink, sweat, wicking fabric. Yeah, you don't want that stink on you. It uses that fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. So make sure you go get a pair of Bird Dogs by going to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA and enter promo code LockedOnNBA for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Last segment, Locked On Hornets, coming up next.
This is Locked On Hornets.
And just that I showed any kind of vulnerability, I think Nada's just going to jump.
You are the gazelle limping through the African safari.
I'm in the mud. I'm in some sticky mud.
You are the hippo stuck in the mud.
Yes. And I'm about to just get destroyed by Nada's
by Nas.
By Nas. He's going to come out with me a rap battle.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
We have a name. It took one more extra segment to try to figure it out, but we have a name for you that is going to come in and play in the rotation. And then we have a new game called Find the Local Angle. Don't know if it's a game, maybe just a segment, but whatever.
Well, it's not a game. It's not a game. It's just a segment. You know, stuff's flying around the news of sports. Maybe in the future I'll work some just regular old news as well. But, you know, because I'm so obsessed with the Charlotte Hornets, because I am such a sicko, when I see news, my brain just immediately goes to, how does this affect the Charlotte Hornets? Or how can I find some kind of way to make this about the Hornets? Because that's my brain is sick. Okay, folks? So when stuff happens, that's what happens. So I want to find the local angle on some of these stories. And within that is the name. The name exists within one of these Find the Local Angle stories. It's not a separate thing. So we can just go right into the Find the Local Angle if you're ready.
Okay, yeah, I'm ready. What's the story and what's the local angle?
Well, I know you're a big host on WFNZ, so certainly you've heard about this story, and maybe you've talked about it already.
Yep. Is
the PGA, I guess, merging, selling to Live Golf, or they're becoming one thing, and so this Saudi-backed golf tournament, LIV, or golf organization is now merging with PGA. A lot of controversy around that and the sports washing of Saudi money, of oil money. And a lot of people talking about it. So there are a lot of angles that you can take on this, folks.
Oh, yeah.
And
Which
Bryce
one are you taking?
DeChambeau tried to take a couple of angles on CNN, which I tweeted about, which were like, what are you talking about?
No,
okay?
He's a golfer. Just leave him alone. You know, he's a golfer. He doesn't have anything to say.
Didn't have to go on television and say any of those things.
Yeah, that's a joke, by the way, because Bryson said that. You know, look, I just want to play golf. And you're the one that joined.
Was it Bryson? I think I just called him Bryce anyway.
No, it is Bryson. My bad. I think I got it wrong. Either I had Bryce McGowan's on the mind. No, the point is, Bryson said, I'm just a golfer. I don't want to get into the politics of it. Okay. On CNN.
Why are you on CNN? There's a whole channel called Golf Channel. Just go there.
All right. That's what Jay tried to do. Jay Monahan, the commissioner of the PGA. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Anyway, so here's the angle. Okay. This is serious, that more of this type of thing is going to happen in sports. It's not just, it's already happened you can see it in European soccer, where a lot of this money that has been generated by these oil barons in the Middle East is now being used to buy up sports teams. It's happened in European soccer, or really, I guess, worldwide soccer. And now you see it happening with golf. And it's not going to stay in golf and soccer. It's going to move to the big American sports, including the NBA, where the NBA is going to allow, or they already do allow, sovereign wealth funds to become part of ownership groups. And Walker, there's a team in the NBA right now that is rumored to be taking bids, or at least having conversations about selling majority stakes. And that, of course, is the Charlotte Hornets. And I think we know the names of the people involved. Rick Schnall and Gabe Plotkin are two of the names that have been bandied about. But to buy a sports team takes a lot of money. Okay, that's not a shocking take. But it takes I think to get approved, you have to prove that money is like liquid. That's the problem. These rich, you think people are rich, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, you've got to buy this thing for, $300 billion or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah. Like on paper, I'm worth a lot, but now I got to go actually find this scratch. Then these sovereign wealth funds come along and say, hey, we'll give you the scratch, but we want part of the team.
Which is it's a great point. You're totally right about this. And the point where you talk about, you think you're rich until you have to buy a sports team and you're not that rich. Like, that's these guys that we're talking about. That's Gabe Plotkin. That's Rich Schnall. Not so rich snobby when you start to go to the Saudi money and you start to go elsewhere. Like, this is not David Tepper looking to purchase the Charlotte Hornets. They need other people. They need more money. It's funny. Like, there's a viral clip, I think, a while back where Lil Wayne is doing this interview and he says, I look up my net worth on Google all the time. I don't see that money. So it's like, okay, how even rich are you?
Yeah, it's not sitting in the Bank of America bank account, right? Like you can't roll up to the ATM and take out your billions of dollars. It's wrapped up into assets and, yachts and super yachts and
not liquid,
super duper yachts. And no, so, and I think it's going to be very interesting because there will come a time when this does happen, and you've got families of 9/11 victims upset about this merger where Saudi money is, again, being sports washed, if you will. And I think there is a lot of controversy in the NBA, the NFL. I mean, no sports franchise will be immune because, look, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but, I would say fossil fuels are on the way down. Electric vehicles are on the way up. Oil's going to go away at some point, and this money's got to go somewhere. And I think one of the places it seems to be already going is professional sports franchises.
Yeah. So you're telling me, by the way, that we have Gabe Plotkin in one corner, the guy behind the GameStop controversy that happened in the stock market, or maybe some Saudi money. So these are the options that we might have right now, at least at the present tense. That's fantastic.
But I don't know. I mean, I think that's the big thing is like there's a big question mark. You don't, and the thing is, it's so much. It's like it's at Bezos level where they do sort of the comparisons on YouTube of like the rice grain is like $100,000, and then like Bezos's money is like a big sack of rice. It's just like it's unimaginable sums of money because people are so shocked by the PGA Live merger because PGA was talking so much junk about Live, and then all of a sudden it's like Live comes along and says, no, actually, we'll give you an unimaginable sum of money. And PJ is like, all right, let's go. Same thing's going to happen in all of these sports franchises in the NBA and the NFL. You're going to think there's no way that this person that's owned this mega franchise, well, let's just take Jerry Jones and the Cowboys. There's no way Jerry Jones would sell. And then, you've got some people saying, oh, we'll give you $300 million. And then he's like, yeah, I'll sell. Right? Yeah, it's Dr. Evil level money. And so I just say that's the local angle is like prepare for that. If that were to happen I don't know if they would be attracted to the Charlotte Hornets. I don't know if I could sell them they've, done a lot of bad stuff, so maybe it makes sense for the Hornets and the Saudis to get involved.
Well, and if they operate
issues.
Well, and if they operate like they did with the Live Tour, then they're getting any sizable name whatsoever. I mean, and not so sizable names to transition from the PGA to Live. I mean, guys that will come even close to winning majors and stuff, and solid names, but not all just Brooks Koepka's and Dustin Johnson. So anyways, all right, do you have one more? We're running out of time. Did you want to do the Miami Heat losing Game 3 local angle?
So many local angles in this. I think it's funny that you and I are having a conversation about the second overall pick. We're really digging in. This is a franchise-altering pick. They've got to get this right. And, you've got Jokic, who was a second round, 40th, 41st overall draft pick. Yeah. You got Jimmy Butler, who was at the bottom of the first round. Giannis won a championship. He was 15th. So, I think the Hornets should trade back, personally. Wow. I think they should trade back to the second round, trade the second pick as mini second round, and just find that Jokic somewhere because he has that Dirk Nowitzki level of like, what the bleep? How the bleep? It is. I don't know how you statistically calculate the how the bleep factor, but like the shots he was putting up at the end of that game that went in were like, how the bleep does that body do that? I don't know.
My takeaway from Jokic is that there's just never a bad offensive possession. It's so crazy. You feel comfortable every single time, and it doesn't matter if the shot clock is dwindling down. He'll throw something from his right shoulder, and it goes right on in. It's ridiculous, Doug. I've never seen anything like it. He
has the LaMelo. This is the other. Here, I'll throw you another local angle. He has the LaMelo ball thing. He does to me what LaMelo does to me sometimes, where he'll make a pass, and I'll go, I didn't even see that guy. Where the hell did that guy come from? How did he see? I didn't see that guy. I'm watching all the guys. He's got a field of vision that is limited by his human eyeballs, whereas I've got this television screen that is showing me the whole court from a sky view. I didn't see that guy. How the hell did he see that guy? So that's crazy.
If he was a quarterback in Madden 06 and QB vision was a thing, the whole field would just be highlighted. He could see everything, even behind him. Everything would be highlighted. All right, that'll do it.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
First of all, I have to be fair because I mentioned a lot of guys that are in this finals that were low draft picks. There is a guy that is in this finals right now that was a high draft pick, 4th overall pick, in fact, 4th overall pick to the Charlotte Bobcats.
That's right.
Cody Zeller.
Yeah,
I haven't given my name yet either. You want my name? I've been teasing it all show.
That's true. I do want your name. Who is your, I think I might know, by the way, but who's your name?
Well, I was looking at this these salaries for the Miami Heat. 8 seed, by the way. Okay, they're an 8 seed. They've got $45 million next season tied up in Jimmy Butler and a lot of money after that. Bam Adebayo, $32 million tied up for multiple years. Kyle Lowry, they got to pay Kyle Lowry $29 million. Duncan Robinson, $18 million. Tyler Hero, who's wearing a bucket hat on the bench. He's bucket hat bench guy. They've got to pay him $27 million. And they got to pay him $33 million in 2026. Okay? They've got a lot of money tied up.
Yeah.
Which means that a lot of these guys you're seeing making big impacts for them in the finals right now are free agents. I'm talking about guys like Max Strus. I'm talking about guys like Gabe Vincent, who now has NBA finals experience. Those could be names. I'm talking about another guy that is a free agent next year playing in these finals. His name, he was the 4th overall pick by the Charlotte Bobcats. His name is Cody Zeller.
Doug, I just want you to know that you can see that bucket hat over what is my right shoulder or left shoulder, whatever you're looking at. And we're going to have bucket hat bench guy game. We're going to have that. That's going to be a thing. And
Triple
I love
B.
that you created that.
Bucket hat bench
All right,
guy.
that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. That last segment was a doozy.
Oh, wait.
Thanks
That's
for
not
making
Triple
us
B.
your...
That's Double B. That's BBG. Bucket hat bench guy.
Yeah, who is how we could have used that is Bryce McGowan's going to be the bucket hat bench guy when it's all said and done. Yeah, we're going to get to that. All right. Thanks for making us your first listen. Make your second listen. Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every contest from across the league with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Oh, Kevin Love, also a free agent.